Page 48, Chapter 6, Beauties and Beasts. Circe was overjoyed to see them. She helped them find Elpenor's body and gave it a burial. His friends planted the rower's oar in his grave mound and called his name 3 times across the ocean. Elpenor's soul was set to rest forever. This done, Odysseus repeated the directions he had been given in Hades, carefully omitting certain details in case his men refused to go on. Circe listened and bit her lip, and nodded unhappily. "If you must go, you must. But since your course lies past the hideous siren singers, take beeswax from my hives, and stop up your ears before you ever get close to the sound. Once a man has heard the song of the sirens, his wits fly overboard, and nothing can save his soul from shipwreck. Believe me, Odysseus, not even your wisdom could save you." Odysseus took the wax. He also promised himself, in his heart of hearts, to hear the siren song. So when they had put to sea and plowed a white furrow to the very brink of the horizon, he plugged each man's ears with beeswax and stood beside the mast. "Polites, tie me to the mast with rope, and if I ask you to set me free, tie me tighter still." "Pardon?" said Polites. So Odysseus took the wax out of Polites' ears and repeated his instructions. Polites bound him to the mast with a coil of strong hemp, resealed his own ears, and bent over the oar once more. Across the water came a chirruping like birdsong, an intriguing but not very beautiful sound. Odysseus strained his ears to hear more. There was no need. The ship passed close by the bald and barnacled rocks, where the sirens sat singing. As it came closer, the singing grew more distinct. It was a song written in an unnameable key, and sung in notes which had never climbed the rungs of a musical stave. "Odysseus, see what flowers we have bound into a crown for you upon this mound. A flask of wine and pomegranate sweet are waiting here for you to drink and eat." It was true. He could see them. 3 women, glistening from head to foot with oily balm, were beckoning him to come ashore. Their unplaited hair reached as far as the water, where it spread out in a fringe of gold around the flowery islet. "Quick, Polites! Circe was lying! She's jealous, that's all. Just look at those sweet faces. How could they do a man any harm? Put in, Polites! The orders are changed! Put in!" But Polites did not lift his eyes from the deck, and although he cast a quick glance over the rail, his face showed nothing but disgust. "Polites, I forbid you to row past! Unplug your ears, you fool!" The boat was drawing level now with the island. "Look, look, my sisters, see his twining curls, a snare to snare the hearts of us poor girls. Oh, pity us who love you, glorious man. Put in now, swim now, jump now, come, you can." "Polites, cut me free, you fool!" Odysseus writhed until he worked one hand free and could scrabble at the knot binding him. In an instant, Polites and Palmedes leapt up from their oars and bound him round, from heel to throat, with a second length of rope. He was all but choking, but he used what breath he had to curse them, to offer them bribes, to threaten them with direct punishments unless they did as he was ordered. The red-prowed boat swept on past the island. Its smell of flowers made Odysseus's head reel. His crew, too, put their hands to their noses, as if the smell was making them dizzy. The sweet song of the sirens became indistinct and sobbing. "Ah, let me go, for sweet pity's sake!" groaned Odysseus, straining against the ropes. "Those poor ladies will be heartbroken if I leave them now." As the sea fell silent, he slumped exhausted in the cords. One by one, the rowers unplugged their ears and turned to one another, pulling faces. "The stench! Those vile creatures! All those bones! All those good men lost! The gods bless Circe for saving us!" Muttering 1,000 apologies, Polites unbound his captain, who was dazed and tearful. "What do they mean, friend? What stench? What creatures? What bones?" "Forgive me, my lord Odysseus, but I don't believe you saw those 3 screeching, scrawny vultures pecking on the bones of 1,000 dead and dying sailors. Ah, those poor men, all stretched out like worshippers at a shrine. What a fearful way to die!" Odysseus nodded but said nothing. A sprinkling of spray wetted his face, and a noise like distant thunder set the surface of the sea shivering, except that it was not thunder at all. It was the clashing rocks. To the port side of the ship, two ridges of rock, razor sharp at the peak, ground together their granite faces like cymbals clashing. The cliff faces gouged and clawed from each other the great gouts of spewing fire, boulders and shards which hurtled into the sea below. The sight and sound was so alarming that the rowers dropped their oars and leapt off their benches to say prayers in the bottom of the boat. It was all Odysseus could do to remind them. "You are soldiers and heroes of the Trojan War. Pull yourselves together. Besides, if you don't row," he said calmly, buckling his sword and setting his brass helmet on his head, "we may well drift under those cliffs. Do show some backbone now, or I shall be ashamed to call you men of Ithaca." Shamefaced and sheepish, they clambered back to their oars and rowed on. The water bubbled and boiled with the heat of the lava bleeding from the clashing rocks, but though it buckled and bleached the boards of the ship, they were not engulfed by any of the tumbling rock sides as they raced by, muscles straining and eyes fixed on the plume of Odysseus's shining helmet. He was proud of them, proud till his heart beat fast in his chest, but he was still careful not to mention what lay beyond the clashing rocks. The broad ocean was narrowing into straits bounded on both sides now by cliffs. To the starboard side, a sheer, beetling wall, smooth as alabaster, rose as tall as one of the pillars which held up heaven. High up in it, as high as the highest window in King Lamus's palace, a single dark cave overlooked the straits. No path led to it. No Cyclops could come out and go with his herd of sheep. The cliff face was so sheer and smooth. All of the men aboard, only Odysseus kept his eyes fixed on that cave. Tiresias' words were branded on his brain. "Do not struggle, but row quickly by." All the rest were looking to the other side, where, gaping as wide as a harbor and spinning as fast as a chariot wheel, a circle of water whirled in a welter of mist and spray. At the rim, the water heaped itself up, and at the center it dipped into a spiral, glassy funnel. Caught up in the maelstrom were the bits and bones of broken boats which had been sucked into the whirlpool, spun to its base, and cracked like eggs against the rocky seabed. The noise was like a long, open-mouthed scream, as if all the hurts done to the ocean were being felt in one place. Twice each day the whirlpool spun to the left. Twice each day it spun to the right. Between times, the shining ocean leveled, and the whirlpool Charybdis was no more than a clutter of wreckage spinning on the surface. But as the tide ebbed or flowed, the monstrous Charybdis screwed itself, twisted and knotted itself into a skein of spinning destruction, and sucked in everything that floated on the sea's surface for 7 miles around. As they watched, the whirlpool slowed and grew shallow. The laughing men shouted their thanks up to heaven, for surely there would be time to row safely by before Charybdis again breathed in. Suddenly Odysseus cried, "Lean on your oars, men! Let me hear your sinews crack! Bend your foreheads to your knees and pull with all your might! And pray, men! Pray as though this were the last day on earth! Let each man call his name loud enough to be heard in the underworld!" Instantly obedient, his men began to call, "Palamedes! Polybus! Eurylochus! Polites! Oh, save us, Odysseus!" No sooner had they called their names than Icmalius, Eurybates, and 4 more besides were snatched from their benches by the hinged jaws of 6 serpents. No, not 6 serpents, but 1 serpent with 6 heads, a lizard-backed and scaly beast whose haunches squirmed in its high, cavernous den, while its clawed feet scrabbled down the cliff face and its 6 heads weaved over the speeding ship. Scylla the monster fed rarely, but well, from the ships which slipped hard by her cliff-top cave, intent on avoiding the whirlpool. Sometimes, when the 2 ships were more than sailing in single file, those following would try to turn back, pushing with all their might against the oars, wrenching aside the tiller. But the pull of Charybdis would still drag them forwards, draw them beneath Scylla's cave, so that she could come out a second time and gorge on men, or store away future meals in her bone-littered den. Odysseus knew that only by braving the Scylla's den could those who survived reach home and family. That was why he did not warn the rowers of what was to come. but now he saw hatred in their eyes because he had steered them close to the monster's cave. Scylla withdrew into her den, and with her went the terrible screams of their 6 comrades. The rowers had no breath to curse their captain. They were racing against time. As the 6-headed lizard stowed her food, the red-prowed ship leapt forwards, painfully slowing as it seemed to claw and wallow its way past the cliff. In panicky fear, the rhythm of the oars was lost, and they clattered together and flailed at the air. Scylla re-emerged, each mouth empty, each of her 12 eyes fixed on the little ship. Charybdis, too, began to coil and roar and suck. With his clenched fist, Odysseus beat out on the prow a rhythm to row by. Pull! And pull! And pull! The sweat ran down. The groans flew up. The Scylla's forepaws scrabbled down the cliff. Her teeth snapped shut, her jaws snatched, and the tillerman felt the breath from 2 of her 12 nostrils hot on his neck. But they were past her, and past Charybdis too, though the monstrous whirl of water was gaping wider and wider with every beat of Odysseus's fist on the prow.